Okay.
Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And I predicted a bit of an unmitigated disaster, and we are trying to get this off the ground. As you can tell, we're in the brand new STS global headquarters here from an undisclosed location in the middle of Miami Beach with a fancy new set that Carm is going to absolutely hate. I'm going to take a quick minute to point this all out. That opening animation, by the way, I don't know if you guys were hearing, there was supposed to be music. This software is so complex. Shout out to Space Coast. I have no idea how he understands how to use this. Been working on this for like 4 or 5 months. It is not the beauty of the artwork per se. It is the software engineering that goes into it. Before we start, there's a bunch of things to say. Number one, huge shout out to Andrew Hayes. He is a Miami street artist who painted this beautiful mural, and you can see it is my lovely mother with Mabel Rose on her lap. And behind my shoulder, which shoulder? Right there is my father's book. I can never be a weatherman, but it's over my shoulder, my father's book. And there you have me, larger than life, bigger than I expected, in a green tuxedo jacket. We've got Edvard Munch's The Scream to indicate the anxiety that funnels through my blood in the front here, the on-air light, the STS sticker, and Space Coast, let's show them the wide shot. And look at this, people saying love the studio already. And by the way, I have to go to like 25 different screens here. This is going to be a big learning curve. And here is the wide shot of the studio. Let's see if this works, guys. There we go. There's a wide shot. My favorite part of the studio, the lampshades just hanging in midair. Sort of love it. So there's another angle. Fil Waters is shaking his head. Fil Waters, first question of the day. What do you think of the new studio?
Well, it was worth the wait. It's pretty amazing, and the technical stuff, yeah, it will work itself out. The little animation we're seeing here with all the emojis, is that supposed to be happening throughout the show?
They're a little distracting, but all this is a work in progress, everybody. The most important thing
I would just make a suggestion that instead of having the emojis, perhaps you need to have your head, my head, and Scott's head
floating around,
and then we can have our respective agencies, signias floating around there in the midst of it.
Today, I'm really wondering if this is the person's first time on STS, if they are actually calling up the founders of YouTube and Google to file a formal complaint. But look, Phil just brings me to an amazing point. In all my years in broadcast news, I could have been interviewing Barack Obama, and they would say to me, I don't like your tie. I spent 5 months of my life putting this studio together. Space Coast is a wizard with software. You have no idea what I'm looking at. 3 different screens. It's very complex. And Fil Waters, he has 2 comments today. The chat letters are too small, and are we going to have floating emojis? This is the love that I get. But Fil Waters, in his advanced years, will adjust to this, and he will learn to love it. But look at that wide shot of that studio. I think it is beautiful. Louise Arthur says, very cool. Everything is different. The chat's different. Look at this. This warms my heart. Tiffany says, so creative. Again, Scott Duffy, I'm already being yelled at for not giving you enough spotlight. So what do you think of the new studio? What can you complain about?
I love it. I'm studying all the detail in that artwork. And I was going to say, Phil, I don't see any emojis. Are you okay? Have you been taking something that
No,
might?
this is good old H2O. There is no gentleman Jack in this, so
And
It's
look at this, all the work that I do, and we still get these comments. Can we talk about Scott's glasses? This comes from Greg. No, we cannot. Today, we cannot talk about Scott's glasses. We can only talk about my studio. STS Nation, let me know if you heard the music for the opening animation. We now have an opening and a closing animation. We've really stepped it up. We are now a major network broadcast, as far as I'm concerned. And we are going to continue to build Survive the Survivor. Love all you guys. Love Phil. Joel, you need truthful friends, it says. And I have that in, here it goes. If you guys saw what I was dealing with, I might have a epileptic seizure, the amount of things I'm looking at here. Okay. So there is news today. Scott Duffy, in your world, I've been keeping close tabs. There are now snipers positioned surrounding a certain area with Danelo Cavalcante, just about 3 miles from where he went missing. So what in the world is going on? How do you think this guy Cavalcante has been able to stay on the run? I think this is day 9 now.
Yeah, it all comes down to the terrain, the climate. It's been extremely hot with the humidity. We've been in the mid to upper 90s, and so that affects certain technological resources. Doesn't wipe them out. It just makes them a little bit more difficult to navigate. So the last number I heard was a couple of hundred federal, state, and local law enforcement, but we're talking about several square miles, and they keep trying to adapt the perimeter to a latest sighting, and especially with the local, let's call it a botanical gardens, the Longwood Gardens has some very state of the art trail cameras, and that's where they're capturing a lot of the still photos that the news is portraying. But to be able to see that and then adapt and move your perimeter, adjust and so forth, it's not real time. So when he might be seen, then you're sending resources to that area. But we're talking about fields and streams and high grass, tall trees. And for someone who we've been told the last couple of days is very resourceful outside, it definitely makes it tough for law enforcement, because law enforcement just can't go right into the woods and just scour the area. It's a very methodical, paceful search, because they're looking up, looking down, and all around. So it's difficult to explain unless you've been there. And back in 1999, a very similar, identical search for the infamous Norman Johnston. We were out there 19 days. So
Hmm.
9 days is a
And,
long
and
time, but it
I
is.
should know who Norman Johnston was or is, but I don't. Who was he?
So the movie At Close Range with
Hmm.
Sean Penn, Christopher Walken, about this Norman, or about this Johnston family. There were 3 brothers, and then of course their kids, nephews, nieces, part of this gang in Chester County and Delaware. And back in the early mid 70s, they started stealing farm equipment, stealing whatever it is that they could steal that wasn't nailed down, including a large heist from the Longwood Gardens that we're seeing center focus with regards to this particular search. And
Hmm.
then as law enforcement started focusing in on this family and starting to bring the family down, then they turned on each other and they started um, killing different family members and other people that they thought were weaklings. And these were kids to their early 20s. I believe there were 6 Somebody might want to correct me on that, but they're homicides. And Norman was one of the brothers responsible for killing or trying to kill his nephew and successfully killing his nephew's girlfriend at the time and doing multiple life sentences.
Mm. By the way, Scott Duffy, as a Jewish guy, Andrew Hayes is not, and he told me he was going to create many Easter eggs for this studio, what he terms Easter eggs, little hidden treasures, which I love. Obviously, by the way, Mabel Rose is was, may she rest in peace, much not much larger, but bigger than she appears there. I think Carmela's going to hate this because I appear so much bigger than she is. She's also screaming at me, which is perfect. But then you see the Surviving the Survivor posters that I have on the original set are actually there. The thing that is most close to my heart, though, my father wrote a book in 1971. As you all know, I'm in the process of working on one, and that is that purple little cover underneath the lampshade. That is my dad's book. And it's cool to have little things of that nature. Phil absolutely hates this because Phil likes to read all the hate comments during the show, and I'm going to find a way that
Well,
Phil
wait a
can
minute.
look.
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to do my Phil thing and interrupt you.
Oh,
Scott
please do.
enjoys it as well. So let's get Scott in here. I want to bring him into this. We both enjoy reading these commentaries.
Absolutely.
That's why we started wearing glasses, as a matter of fact.
Yes, I'm right there with you, Phil.
And I'm gonna make that happen somehow. I don't know how yet. If again, Phil, if you could see the intricacies of this software, Space Coast, I have such a new respect and admiration for him. Was the dog Mabel? Just for I want to correct the record. Mabel, Mabel Rose. There was only one. Will only ever be one. May she rest in peace. By the way, Phil, how is Nugget? And then we'll move along. I could only have debuted this show with the great Fil Waters and Scott Duffy. No one else would have put up with it. I don't know that I can ever do another show from this studio. This is very stressful, but at least for today. Nugget is asleep?
Nugget is actually today, she is stretched out on the couch.
So hopefully she wakes up. But Fil Waters, Pennsylvania State Police, they now have about 400 people. This is so active. I mean, literally, if you are into Twitter the way I am, because you can follow news stories, there's a new tweet every 3-4 seconds. 400 people were brought in for this search, Phil. This is a quote from the Pennsylvania State Police, Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens, who said, "We pulled more people in through the night last night, some additional help from other agencies, from our own agencies. We've got somewhere north of 350, close to 400 people working on this today as we speak." I know you've seen the video, Fil Waters. The guy is 5 feet tall, soaking wet, 120 pounds. He crab walked. He grabbed both sides of the wall with his feet and hands and crab walked his way out of there. What about that? And what about the fact that 400 people are still searching for him like 8 or 9 days later now, Phil?
Well, this is a military op. They're putting together the same types of things and resources that we would have used in the Marines. So the area Scott has already spoken about. I have been told, my commentary yesterday on another broadcast was it's a 10-mile square area. That's a pretty big area. And so needing all those personnel to cover it, not a surprise. And they have, and of course, you can always, the perimeter itself can be broadened, it can be decreased. So you've got some flexibility there. The fact they've got counter snipers, that's not a surprise either. And by these emojis, I think there must be something that the viewers are doing. This looks like they can put an emoji on here because all of a sudden there's like 20 of them that come flying across the screen. You're not seeing this, Scott?
Yeah, no, we're seeing it. By the way, there's a comment up right now, Scott. We got to fix all this too, but it's from Elle Rose, my good friend in Australia. She says, "Love the red mood." By the way, I was going for kind of cigar bar mystery vibes and aesthetics, Joel. Phil is jealous the studio has overshadowed his shirt. Any veracity to that, Phil
No,
Waters? We didn't even
I'm
talk.
not jealous about the studio. I think the studio is wonderful. In fact, I'm not jealous about anything. I'm just wondering where all these emojis are coming from. It's just they're flying across the screen, and there's like hundreds.
It's all
of them.
it's all
Anyway,
part of their.
get back to the answer. The little Brazilian midget Spider-Man guy, murderer. Yeah, and I'm sure I'll fade heat for that, right? So the getting out of that place, that was pretty amazing. This guy's a thinker. So he's been thinking about how do I get out of here, I'm sure, since the moment he showed up there. And what I'm a little surprised of is there's a camera right there. Who's the guy in the picket that's not watching that camera? So how does that even happen? So there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be a reevaluation of the way security is maintained in that prison. So that's the first thing that I noted, was that it's actually on video. So in real time, it was happening. And someone in the picket was either asleep, went out to lunch, went to the bathroom, whatever. But a great a breakdown right there in the security network. And where he is now, I mean, who knows? The guy, he's a little. There's no telling where this guy could hide, given his physical, his stature. So it's going to be. They're going to find him now. They may, and what's interesting too is if you go to the beginning of this thing when we talked. The authorities did exactly what I said they would need to be doing, which is checking any thefts, any burglaries, any carjackings, auto thefts, things of that nature that are going to indicate a direction of travel. He's acquired some new clothes, so they did all that. And then we started picking him up on video. So Scott and I talked about this when this thing first got cranked up. So they're doing what needed to be done, and now they have gotten to the point where we have this guy contained, although it's in a large area. But I think they're doing a fine job. They're doing what needs to be done here, and it's going to. The only question now is what is going to be the final outcome here. And I will say what I said in another broadcast is that he is the one that's going to determine how this ends.
Very, very apropos of Phil Waters to say it that way. Space Coast, I think we can ease off the floating emojis. I love the emojis, but then I get a few people who say that they think they could seize as a result, and I'm one of them. So let's ease off of those for a little bit. Ketchup. Man, this might be the most stressful day of my life, which is not saying a lot, talking to a guy that's a Marine, FBI agent, but my head is going to explode. There's a lot that went into this. Ketchup says tower guy allegedly got fired. Scott Duffy, this is also the second escape since May. Let's just stop right there, Scott Duffy. I mean, 2 escapes since May. Heads have to roll for this, right? We had Lenny DePaul on. You were on with him, Scott Duffy. Lenny DePaul is a legend in my mind and a legend in a lot of other people's minds. He was a Secret Service agent. He ran the largest fugitive task force, only oversaw by Congress. And, he said to expect it to take some time, Scott, but I didn't think it was going to take 8 or 9 days to find this 120-pound Brazilian.
Yeah, and it's going to take some more. It's very difficult to explain, especially to those that are within the perimeter, neighbors, residents that are extremely on high alert. It's very stressful. Not to mention that schools have been closed for the past week, and so all this is just adding to pressure. You can see the lieutenant colonel for the state police and the acting warden. You can just see the stress of trying to do what they have to do and come out and speak to the public, and then try to continue to answer the difficult question as, okay, so you see him on a camera, why is he not arrested within minutes of that? And of course, all that, it's comes down to law enforcement, as many as there are. Think about it, just put 400. There was 200, a little over 200 just a couple of days ago. They've doubled those efforts. But as Phil said, with regards to this changing perimeter, you're talking about 10 square miles, 6, whatever. Just think of a square mile, much less double, triple, quadruple that. They're not shoulder to shoulder. It's not like they're doing a grid search for evidence. They don't have anything to worry about. They have everything to worry about, because he's already proven in one, convicted of a brutal homicide, on the run, and charged for another, a shooting in Brazil and a stabbing here. So he's already shown the propensity to use any weapon of means to hurt those that he loved. And I'll use that word loved with quotation marks. What would he do to anybody that he comes across? It's you have to think of the worst. And so thereby law enforcement is very slow and methodical in their searches. When there's a noise complaint, it could be an animal, it could be the wind. But if there's an open shed, that takes time to clear that shed, approach the shed, and then of course clear the shed. And you're not you and then of course add to the fact that you have heavy brush, rural. He's been known to perhaps climb trees. So now you're adding a tremendous amount of ground that has to be covered, and you have road closures, and you have teams. But at the end of the day, it's going to take a little bit of luck, a lot of prayer that one of these 400 plus law enforcement actually see him so they can engage him. However, that's going to end, exactly as Phil said, will be up. Either the arms and the hands are going up, or it's going to be game over.
He's got two choices: hands up, or that is it. Per Scott Duffy. Teresa in the Republic of Ireland, thanks for stopping the emojis as one floats right by. I'm epileptic. Space Coast, let's keep a lid on the emojis for now. But definitely an interesting new feature of all this. Again, we are I'm gonna give a shout out to Andrew Hayes. I think he might be in the chat because I saw some people talking to him. But Andrew is an amazing street artist. I'm gonna put his info into today's show summary. Travels around the country, does a lot of interesting mural work and artwork. I just found him by a total fluke here in Miami, and he painted this. You can even see that little STS Nation hashtag and Space Coast. If you go back to the wide, you can't see it on the wide even because it's all the way on the other side, but it says best guest. So we've got all our bases covered there. Back to this beautiful wide shot with the hanging lampshades. So Fil Waters, a couple more minutes on this, and then we're going to switch gears. So there have been 8 to 9 credible sightings, a bunch of different reported burglaries. What is this guy living on right now? I mean, he's got to be eating, they say he's eating berries probably, and just some water and things, are, maybe power bars or peanut butter that he has stolen. But how long can someone keep at this the way he is?
Well, it's the old adage, he can go many more days without food than he can without water. So unless there's a source there of water for him, he's facing dehydration. It's hot. So there's a lot of factors here that they may end up finding him passed out, or possibly, gone to the big Brazilian holdover in the sky. So there's no telling how this is going to turn out. I've been involved in these kind of searches, and I can tell you from the law enforcement perspective of it that it's very methodical. It's very tedious, and you have quadrants that are broken up, and you have teams that are going in, and it's one of those moments where you're on the edge continually because you don't know where he is. And the likelihood that he's going to see you coming before you see him is very high. So it's a very intense situation, and we don't know what shape he's in at this point. He may be laying in the woods there somewhere, passed out or dead already. We don't know. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see what the final outcome here is.
That's an interesting thing I didn't think about. Maybe he is already deceased, possibly. Although there have been quite a few, by the way. M. Faithful says, Andrew, love the mural, especially the little doggo. Looks adorable. Followed by our friend, I am not T-Pain. That looks so freaking cool for real. Your studio is amazing. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Nice to hear that. The floating lampshades, my favorite. Stole it from somebody, I think. Scott Duffy, just to put a bow on this, I put you on the spot. I think it was Wednesday. When does this end? I mean, I know you know some people working the investigation. What are you hearing?
There, and I think we all got that alert. I have a few friends that I've been on a group text with who have their ear to the ground, and there was a potential. There was a word that went out that he might have been in custody. Of course, that was false information, and this is going to happen as they come across these hot leads, and pretty much the world is watching. A huge presence of cameras that they just are waiting. So going back 1999, it was 19 days of very much the same type of methodical search, and it's the exact same area. 2000, I believe it was 14. I could be off on the year, but there was a manhunt for another killer who shot and killed one trooper, shot another, ambushed them right in their own barrack, and then fled back into the woods. And that lasted about 45 days. So you can imagine if somebody sets out, and I imagine as there was from what I heard, that it was an identical prison escape, same crap crawl right up this very, very wall, not just a few months before in May. And even though there was a added fencing and whatnot, some razor wire, he managed to get through it. And so if he managed to get through that, the dealing with whatever the insects, the climate and so forth is not gonna stop him. So it's I do not see a surrender. I see law enforcement engaging him with either an immediate in custody or otherwise. And so it's really a day to day, and it's going to come down to them coming across him.
I watched an interview on Court TV. This is Jersey Jen Castaldi about an hour ago of a family that lives 1.5 miles from prison, and the door of the treehouse they had built for their 5-year-old son was busted open. Presumably, maybe he was hiding in there. Just to wrap it up again for the third time, Phil. As far as we know, he doesn't have a weapon. He committed his murder of his girlfriend here in the United States by stabbing her 38 times in front of her 2 young children. Do you think he's picked up a knife along the way? Do you agree with Scott that he's going to potentially pull that knife and not put those hands up and go after officers?
Yes.
Suicide by cop? Going to get a yes.
It's
now.
possible. I mean, anything's possible here. This guy's he's got nothing to lose. He's doing, I think, life with no parole in Pennsylvania. He's got the thing going on waiting for him in Brazil. So where's he going to go? And most of the time when these folks, and I understand he's heading south to wherever south is going to end up being, but he's really got nowhere to go. This guy he's played all of his cards. And so he will either say, I'd rather go back to 3 hots and a cot, or I would rather just end this now, and let's be done with it. So those are the two options: either in custody or we're going to send him on down the road.
Fil Waters, let me ask you a question. Let's say you're back in Houston and hypothetically this search is going on a mile from your home. What would you be doing right now?
Well, I would be, as I'm always, I'm locked and loaded. And so it would be just being more aware of, and we've had incidents where we've had people that have escaped from custody in the general area. We're in a largely rural area, so it has happened before, and it's just a more heightened sense of awareness. And I'm going to, if somebody comes up or see somebody, they're probably going to get questioned looking at the business end of my 1911.
You never want to approach Bill when he is not prepared for you to approach him, especially the bunker back in Houston. There is the wanted poster here from Danelo Cavalcante. Look at that, 5 feet tall, 120 pounds. By the way, he's born in 89. That beard's making him look a little bit older. They want you to call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-4PA-TIPS, 4PA-TIPS. Don't mess with Scott Duffy either. He has taken care of what he needs to take care of in case this guy gets anywhere close to the Duffy residence. By the way, some breaking news here. Just got a text message from the COE. Huge shout out to everyone who applied for the mod positions. That was awesome. I said to the COE, what are all these emails? She said, don't worry about it. I am dealing with something. She was lining up new mods, and we now have the official new mods for STS, and they are the following. Friend of the show, Frankie Figs. I am not T-Pain. Jersey Copper Horse. I had to pick one Jersey person. I swear on my life I didn't pick any of these. Didn't even know these names till just now, although I do know Copper Horse is from Jersey. Little Monster 1325, and perhaps my favorite name, Gen X Granny. Once again, Frankie Figs, I am not T-Pain, Copper Horse, Little Monster 1325, Gen X Granny. Congrats to all of you, and thank you all for applying, and we're going to have more things down the road to be a part of. Right now, let us take a moment to remember Kaylee Gonzalez, of course, Maddie Mogan, Xana Kernodal, and Ethan Chapin, because we're going to switch gears for a few minutes and talk about the evildoer, as Fil Waters calls him. So the most recent thing here, Fil Waters, they are now delaying the demolition of 1122 King Road for the second time, and there is no timetable now. As you recall, they were talking about bringing this house down before the trial. Now they say they're going to kind of leave it up in perpetuity. Good call, bad call. What say you?
Well, I think that's appropriate given the possibility of a trial. And the defense is going to want the opportunity to walk into that courtroom and make a motion to take the jury to the location. And so I don't see, I have zero problem with, let's let this building stand, the structure stand until this case is adjudicated one way or the other.
Scott Duffy, university leaders, they met just yesterday, and that's when they made this decision. University of Idaho took ownership. I believe the owner of that home literally just handed it over to them. And again, no new demo date. Your experience, your vast experience in the FBI, do you still believe this is a legitimate crime scene that should be held up, or at the very least held up and kept intact for jurors if they want to do a walkthrough, let's say, one day?
Yeah, I totally agree with Phil. We're at this point where if if it came down, they should have taken it down and won that fight. And then, of course, there would have been whatever and erect, start your memorial and whatever they're going to turn this into in the future to try to give um, an everlasting memorial to these four souls. But at this point, because of the fight and the banter and people weighing in, it should remain as is and be allowed if the defense is going to want to do whatever it is to do a visit, then so be it. And there just won't be anything from the prosecution side that they would have to fight for or defend. So at this point, we're coming up on a year, and so it wouldn't make sense to level it now.
Hard to believe when you said that. November 13th will be 1 year. Moto 88 congratulating all the new mods. So, Fil Waters, as I say often, I don't know much about anything, and certainly not much about this, but the Latah County prosecutor, the guy with the great beard, Bill Thompson, rather than cross-examining this expert witness for Kohberger, he flagged the FBI to investigate her. Her name is Gabriela Vargas. She testified on behalf of the defense back on August 18th. She's an expert on genetic genealogy, but he got word that she may have been reneging on some of the things she says. It's a little, sort of unclear. So he sent the FBI knocking on her door. Have you heard of this before?
I have not heard this, no.
Is this common practice? Have you heard of prosecutors asking the FBI to investigate defense witnesses? Because that's essentially what happened here.
Well, I would say, given this case and given the fact that we had the multiple agencies involved in this investigation, I don't find this to be anything that's alarming. I think that given this circumstance, given the prosecution of this defendant, and they're bringing in their experts and so on, and that's what ends up being. Usually these experts, in my experience, and I now am on the other side of this, where I have been retained as an expert in criminal cases to offer an opinion about the investigation and so forth and so on, or aspects of it. It ends up being, unless you have the battle of the experts, in most cases ends up being, if we were in Vegas, it's a push. Now, there are some times, and when I do expert testimony, get involved as an expert, I tell the attorneys I'm working for right up front that I am not a hired gun. And I'm not going to walk in there and just parrot what they might want me to say. And there are experts out there that will do that. They'll take the check and they will say their opinion is whatever the defense wants them to say. And I don't do that. Now, I have tell them straight up that you've either got a good defense here or your guy is toast. And I can tell you that without exception, they more appreciate that approach than they do the guy that's going to come in as an expert and just tell them what they want to hear, because it's going to come out on the stand. I mean, when you have somebody like that, it's going to, if that's what they are, then that's what they're going to appear to the jury as being. So it's real important when you start talking about experts. And in this particular case, if you're saying that this expert in genealogy, DNA genealogy, did you say she's now reneging on some of the things that she said?
Allegedly, that's according to reports. Yes. So, That is what she's saying. I want to continue with it, but I meant to ask this question. We're going to get right back to it, I promise. This is from Artemis, either a German Shepherd or a Belgian Malinois, my favorite kind of people. Scott Duffy, we're going to get back to Kohberger, I promise, in 2 seconds. Any chance that Cavalcante is outside that perimeter, Scott Duffy, and he just slipped through the cracks?
Oh, there's always a chance, but I'll go with what the last presser is, that he believes, that is the lieutenant colonel of the Pennsylvania State Police, believes he's still within the perimeter, and that's based on the last known camera. And so if the last known camera shot of him is within their perimeter, then that's good information. And then that's as good as until the next time he's spotted and he's not in that perimeter. And then we all, everything shifts. But this is a very fluid, very methodical, and there's a very tight perimeter, but then there are plenty of outer perimeter law enforcement that's waiting until there's good word, and if he's out, then that quickly changes. So they're dealing with a very fluid, and anything can change, but they also are dealing with what the evidence is telling them, and that he's within that perimeter. And it's a chokehold. It's a slow but methodical, but they will try to close in on him.
I just wanted to make sure he's not near my home in Florida, because I'm never locked and loaded, because I never learned how to fire a gun, but I'm going to learn, especially now that I'm living in Florida and now that I am friends with Scott Duffy and Fil Waters. Might have to hit a firing range at a crime con. They should build a firing range at crime con. Back to you, Fil Waters. So the direct quote from Ann Taylor, the public defender representing Bryan Kohberger, and the quote goes, "Last night she was visited," this meaning this witness, "by 2 FBI agents and interrogated about her testimony and the findings of her declaration. That, in our view, impacts Mr. Kohberger's due process rights." Then Bill Thompson, the prosecutor, again said that he heard, according to colleagues, that she was reneging on some of the things that she was testifying to in court. And his quote was, "When we heard of that, I reached out to investigators and asked, can you please find out what is going on?" Again, I have never heard of this, where a prosecutor reaches out to the FBI to question a defense witness. I don't know. Am I the only one, or is this unusual? Not unusual? Why would the feds have to get involved? Why couldn't he just send an investigator from his office, let's say?
Was
Phil?
that a question for Phil?
That's for Phil. Is Phil
Oh,
not
for
hearing
me,
me?
I was giving Scott.
Phil, I thought you were thinking. I thought you were thinking about the answer. I thought you were having it. Then I thought you were having a Mitch McConnell moment.
You're like a defense attorney, Joe. You went on so freaking long, I forgot what the question was. So,
did you just have a Mitch McConnell moment, Fil Waters? Was that Mitch McConnell?
well, it could be. It could be. Yeah, I just don't have anybody here.
The bottom line is, why didn't they hire an
investigator? Where I need to be.
I'm very stressed out today. Why didn't they just send an investigator from the prosecutor's office instead of calling the feds? That seems weird.
Well, it's the same answer that I just gave. So this was a multi-agency investigation. The FBI was involved in it. And if I'm the prosecutor, perhaps it gives me more credibility to have what is viewed to be a more impartial group conduct that interview, rather than sending detectives from Moscow PD or sending somebody from the DA's office, investigators from the DA's office. So what do? You've already got the FBI involved in the overall investigation. So why not use that resource to go and interview this particular person? And that gives at least the appearance that this is objective and it's open-minded, and there's not investigators or detectives more closely associated with those agencies, local agencies, that might have what is perceived to be an agenda. So I think it's a wise choice by the prosecutor to use the resources of the FBI that are already deeply involved in this investigation. So I don't find anything unusual about it, about the fact that this witness is being questioned, nor do I find it anything unusual in this particular case that the FBI is that resource that they draw from to answer these questions.
Good point. Good point. So sort of an independent, objective entity. Scott Duffy, to you, Bill Thompson went on to say, and I quote here, the FBI, your old organization, Scott, indeed undertook an investigation, and other reports are that Miss Vargas, the defense witness, claimed that some of what was in her declaration, she said, had inadvertently agreed to or signed without fully reading it. So she admitted, according to Bill Thompson, that she was just signing papers for the defense that she didn't fully read. That seems, Phil is rolling his eyes. I'm doing the same thing. I mean, how can you be a defense witness, a quote unquote expert? You don't read the fine print. You're not reading what they're asking you. I mean, how can anyone take this woman seriously now?
Yeah. So if I can, for the sake of back up and then answer with regards to that. So Phil's totally on point, and it is for at least us standard operating procedure that when the prosecution is giving all the defense witnesses, that the prosecution and whoever are their chief investigators can look through that list and say, hey, let's go visit this person and interview them and get an idea or a sense of what it is that they are going to say. So we're doing background checks, and then of course, if it's worth it, we go and actually do a interview, and that person has all the right in the world to say, I wish not to talk, but you have to at least tempt it. And what you're trying to do is gather information that you can enter into a report that could be impeachable of the witness, and then the witness is going to review the report that is written and then say, yeah, I did say that, and boy, I don't remember even reading that, so I'm conflicted and I've impeached myself. And so they could even take themselves out as a witness. So and the FBI interviewing, it all depends where this witness is located. If this witness is located first of all outside the jurisdiction, and they're weighing their costs to say, hey, we'll send 2 detectives who are tied to the case by airplane, whatever it is, and then of course send them out to perhaps not even get a consented interview. Why not, since the FBI is involved, where they could just send a memo to the office and say, would a couple agents go out and visit at no cost, no extra cost? So it's any one of those possibilities exist. But now you have good information from the prosecution to give right back, because they're going to give those reports right back to the defense and say, you may want to think twice about putting that witness on. That's all.
The wonderful Catherine Regier, who is in Maui, I heard an awful story today. Now Maui is suffering in a totally different way. By the way, she says, I keep noticing more details. Is that I can't even read it because of the way my setup is, but she wanted to know if that is an Edvark Munch sculpture, and that is indeed what it is. The Scream. It is his famous artwork. It represents anxiety and stress, which is those are the pillars. That's like my constitution. So I put Edvard Munch down there, and that's exactly who that is, looking like he's horrified. But I was listening to a story today, and Fil Waters, to you, now the issue in Maui is that there's zero tourism. No one is going, and everyone is collecting unemployment. Restaurants are empty, hotels are empty, and people are getting laid off. That's sort of a sad ancillary result of this horrific set of fires. Is it not, Fil Waters?
It is, but I have also heard that October the 8th, I believe it is, that they are going to open up West Maui to tourism. There's just not going to be a lot there. So it does have a big impact, of course. And I tell you what, the economic impact is one thing. But I will tell you, there is such a rich culture here that the cultural impact and the lives of those folks over there that have been greatly affected by what has happened can never be replaced. There were some things that, in terms of historical documents and those kinds of things that go back, hundreds of years, it's just were destroyed, and they'll never get those back. So that impact is, I think, in my opinion, is greater than the economic impact. The economic impact will rebuild itself over time, but you're not going to be able to recapture what was lost from a cultural perspective over here.
And Catherine Regier says, yes, all caps. Please visit Maui. The rest of Maui is beautiful and open. No need to go to West Maui right now. Although Fil Waters just said they're going to be opening up West Maui. Ketchup says, all my love for Hawaii. Teresa says, Joel, where is Mabel Rose? I can't see her. If you look at my beautiful mother, who is screaming at me with her finger pointed like it is Great Scott, to True Crime Phil, you will see little Mabel Rose, smaller than she actually was. She was sort of, hate to say this, she was a little fat in real life, just a little overweight, but she looks very petite there, much bigger in size and stature than, let's say, Nugget, who's a tiny little chihuahua. Hope I didn't perk her ears up just now. But moving on here, I got to say, I think I've lost weight from the stress I've endured today. We were working on this all day, and I'm ready for the weekend. Danny Masterson, Scott Duffy, I know you watched that 70s show. I never saw a single episode of it. Hate sitcoms in general. That's why I do true crime. Phil, are you a fan?
No, I lived in it. I didn't have to watch a made-up show about it.
I loved it. There he is, Danny Masterson, sentenced to 30 years to life. Fascinating story to me, Scott Duffy, because it doesn't matter your race, creed, color, celebrity, not celebrity. No one is above the law. He was just convicted of raping 2 women. And the quote from one of the victims, when you raped me, you stole from me, said one woman. Who was convicted. Masterson was convicted of raping back in 2003. By the way, that was the height of that show's popularity. And she went on to say, that's what rape is. It is a theft of the spirit. She said, you are pathetic, disturbed, and completely violent. The world is better off with you in prison. And it appears the judge agreed in this case. There was a mistrial the first time around. They quickly retried him, Scott Duffy. And now he's only eligible for parole, I think, after 25 years and could spend the rest of his life. What about the fact that a guy that's been on the late night circuit, he's been on the Jimmy Kimmels, was a star, was a celebrity, is now living a life of ignominy? Is this a good reminder that no one is above the law?
It is, and it also kudos to the jury to be able to see through that, right? So, we all have our idols, whoever they may be in any, whether it be media, sports, or family. But then people who tend to have that celebrityness are put on these pedestals, and we see them for the character that they portray as opposed to the people that they are. And so as the court has provided that Danny Masterson was not the actor, was not the person that people have watched and enjoyed and maybe grown to love, that character, that fake persona. And so it could be difficult for anyone trying to separate that to a jury, especially if the jury was made up of individuals that had known Masterson and his work. And so thereby have to really work against that to be able to say, okay, I believe the evidence that's been put forward and in this case said guilty. So, it's absolutely a um a taller hill, more difficult to get up and be able to level the playing field, so to speak, and make this person who this person was a rapist, and so thereby deserves what any other convicted rapist deserves, and do not give this person credit for what they do on screen.
Well put. Again, no one is above the law. M. Faithful says, Phil Waters, I'm so surprised his wife, actress Bijou Phillips, is standing by him like she is. Are you, Phil?
Well, no, I mean it's clear that there's a lot of stuff going on here with this particular case. This scumbag is exactly where he should be. I would think that people like him, when they have the opportunity for parole, that it would be denied. I just don't have any patience for this brand of evil. And the backstory on him is, of course, he's all involved in Scientology. So there were, and this was a lot of the factors in reportedly about the conduct that he was involving himself in, some sort of justification and these.
Yeah, and Phil, right on cue there, Phil. There's a comment.
There you go.
There's a
So,
comment here. It says cult of Scientology supported him. And then over here, Scientology got way too much money to go down. Do you think that the church here did I don't know, enable him in some way?
oh, I'm certain that they did. In my study of a variety of religions and so forth and so on, Scientology is it's a cult. It's evil. It's those things are encouraged, and it's all about fulfilling yourself. In fact, L. Ron Hubbard, the guy that was a science fiction writer that developed it, his son came out years and years later and said that his father was actually a practicing Satanist, but he knew he couldn't market Satanism, so he just took the tenets from that particular religion and he turned it into the Book of Dianetics and the Scientology religion. So I'm not surprised at all about this evildoer's conduct. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there were two victims in this thing, right?
Yes, there was a third victim, but he was not. There were three charges or three counts, I should say, but he was not convicted on the third count. Correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all three of them were involved in the Church of Scientology to some degree.
That I don't know.
I think I've read that, and that that's how he got in contact with them, and so forth and so on. And so a lot of the sexual assaults that he was committing was based on the justification within the ideology of that particular religion. So yeah, it's a real, it's disgusting. It's evil. It's not mental illness. This is evil. And he's got, well, I was going to say he's got what he deserved, but I don't think he's got what he's deserved. So perhaps when he gets to prison and he meets his cellmate, Bubba, then he will have a whole reawakening as to what life is all about.
Phil Waters, without getting too graphic, you raise an interesting point. Do rapists in prison, are they ever targeted for that crime by having it reciprocated to them in the prison system?
Well, yeah, the short answer is yes. There is a pecking order within any culture, within the prison culture, within that system, there is a pecking order. And I can tell you that rapists, child abusers, those folks are on the lowest rung of the ladder. and they will reap the whirlwind. When they get there, the I would imagine that he, and especially given the fact that he has a presumed celebrity status, I think when he gets there, they will those folks that take care of that kind of thing will release the Kraken on him.
I can't say it enough. There's no bigger deterrent in my world than prison. I just never want to experience that. Never want to do anything that could remotely involve spending any time there. I don't think I would do very well. STS, chief of everything, says he likes to sit in the dark. Someone said that I am too dark. We've grappled with the lighting for months. There's either a glare or not enough glare. I do enjoy the dark, I have to say. The COE, the bedroom light, is referred to as the sun. I don't like the sun on after a certain time. I am a night owl. And so someone else said, what is with the creepy new set? This is a true crime show. I'm going for the velvety cigar bar feel, and don't know if I've captured it. There are going to be tweaks to this. By the way, look at this. This is my spirit animal. Jessica K says, where did it go? I have to catch up to these chat. This chat is so hard now. She says, I love sitting in the dark too. Jessica, email me. We'll talk about sitting in the dark.
Joel, it does. I'm struck by the fact that it looks like you may be sitting in an office in hell. So that's what struck me about this set. But of course, well, given the topic, maybe that is somewhat appropriate.
Yeah, this is look at this. Now we've got the dark is soothing. Love this set. Looks great. Halloween look. Not really going for the Halloween look, but I'm going for true crime. Devoted to Mariah says, I'm a night owl who sits in the dark with red lights too. Ignore the haters, Joel. Phil would be one of those. I love the studio, red and everything. Give me, you guys, all your honest opinions. You can also email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram, Surviving the Survivor. Also at Podcast STS, at Podcast STS. The level of stress this is creating for me to go through 3 different screens and know that Phil is annoyed that he can't read the comments is almost too much for one man to bear. But I'll get it straightened out. I trust you. We'll get it all straightened out. Scott Duffy, the second woman, on a very serious note here, we're talking about one of the most heinous crimes. She said that Danny Masterson, and I quote here, has not shown an ounce of remorse for the pain he caused. I knew he belonged behind bars for the safety of all the women he came in contact with. I am so sorry. I'm upset. I wish I'd reported him sooner to the police. And this is one of the issues that victims deal with, is that they didn't, speak up soon enough. But Scott, what about the fact that he got away with it so long? There was a mistrial. He almost got away with it altogether. That these predators who prey on innocent women, especially with celebrity status, sometimes do slip through the cracks. But this time, this guy was caught. Do you think he's feeling any remorse?
I would love to see what the sentencing hearing looked like, and then to be able to see his face. I didn't see it, so
he had absolutely no emotion, completely stoic.
Yeah, I would say that he's not feeling the remorse. Then I just don't see it, especially for so long and to so many, and to keep fighting the fight. This he could have taken it a different way, and he chose to go down. And when you do this, especially when the evidence is overwhelming, you are re-victimizing your victims, and you're taking pleasure in that. So I would say the remorse is not there.
Mark A says prison cell set would have been cool. Could have been an interesting look. Me sitting in a empty, sterile prison cell. Phil might have enjoyed that. The judge, to round out Danny Masterson, said, "I know that you're sitting here steadfast in your claims of innocence and thus no doubt feeling victimized by a justice system that has failed you. But Mr. Masterson," the judge said, "you are not the victim here. Your actions 20 years ago took away another person's voice and choice. One way or another, you will have to come to terms with your prior actions and their consequences." Again, I cannot think of anything more frightening than being told by a judge you're going to be spending 30 years to life in prison. But he is convicted of these crimes, and he deserves what he is getting because of that, fame or no fame. Phil Waters, I'm actually going to have a panel on this next topic this coming Wednesday with some psychologists. Suddenly, there's a flurry of disturbing stories about female teachers sexually seducing their younger male students. This one was an Alabama math teacher at a private Christian school. She's accused of having sex with two teenage boys who had both been her students. Her name is Crystal Frost, 35. She's a married mother of three, resigned last month from Crenshaw Christian Academy, which, by the way, ironically is known as the home of the Cougars for its football team. She was caught exchanging explicit photos with a student on Snapchat, and the investigation gets a little more intense from there. But you are looking at Crystal Frost, and she's got a child who is pixelated there, of course. Phil Waters, almost always we think of, men sexually assaulting women, male teachers sexually assaulting female students. But here, the tables are turned. It is the female teacher preying on the male student. Your reaction to hearing this?
Well, when I was growing up, that's exactly what it was, Joel. It was the male teachers were having relationships with the inappropriate relationships with female students, and it was in the school that I came, my high school. It was prevalent. We had two or three, and it always seemed to be, football coaches and cheerleaders and that kind of thing. And I guess, you kind of understand that in that world, the ages between those football coaches, they were young guys just out of college, was not terribly different, separated from the seniors, the students in the school. And so you could kind of understand it happening because it was more of a boyfriend girlfriend thing. It wasn't just we're going to go out here and have a friends with benefit arrangement. So what we're seeing now, and I'm not saying it was right, I'm just saying the circumstances were a little different. The outcome was the same, but the circumstances were a little different. In fact, there was one of my coaches that ended up marrying the cheerleader, and they were only separated by maybe 4 years. So it's all relative, but these things that are happening now, and we're seeing it all the time. She's not the first one on the radar. We're seeing this all the time with these married female teachers going after these young boys. And it just amazes me. I just think it's a symptom to a bigger problem. And it's a glaring example of the way the schools are now being used as platforms to try to satisfy some deviant sexual desire. I'm just aghast at this. So this type of conduct, and then we've got, of course, this will get them going. We got drag queens at freaking schools and libraries. I just saw where some drag queen was name the principal of a school. I'm just, the whole world is turned upside down. We now have the inmates running the asylum, and people like her are examples of the bigger problem within the schools, that we're not doing what we should be doing. We're not educating those kids. We are indoctrinating them, and we are abusing them in the worst possible way, because you're talking about kids, young boys that are entering that puberty, and here we go, hormones are flowing, and you get some woman like this that's twice their age with a family, 3 kids of her own. And what is her first priority? To satisfy her own sexual desires by assaulting these young boys. It is beyond disgusting, and there is no excuse for it. But I can see why we are where we are. And until the parents start standing up and getting people like this out of there, then we're going to continue to have these things. I mean, I think what was the famous one that kind of got this stuff all started? Letourneau, wasn't that her name?
Yeah, Mary Kay Letourneau, and she ended up marrying her student.
She passed away a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, she passed away, but she was married to that guy for a long time.
She was, and of course, that whole relationship though was always in turmoil, and I think they had children together, so forth and so on. And look, that whole thing was, when it got started, that was like an anomaly. That was like, this is weird. And now this gal you just had up here, it's just commonplace now. I guarantee you, every week you can read about some female teacher sexually abusing these boys. And they're doing it in the classroom. They'll meet them in a park in their car. They'll go out in a car in the park. These people are depraved. And the fact that it's happening at this particular case at a Christian school, of course, the negative, I mean, there's a ripple effect on that, because now you're going to have all these people that come out and say, yeah, see, these Christians, yada, 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 yada. So it has an effect in so many different ways. And what I will say to them is look, this type of conduct in a Christian school, in a church, anywhere that has any type of Christian-based theology behind it, this type of conduct by people does not diminish the message of the fact that Christ loves everyone, that God loves everyone. So I want to make that clear, and I'm sure that'll get them all going too, and I don't care. But I'm just...
Now you don't have the chat to read it.
What's that?
I said, now you don't have the chat to read all of your hate messages.
Well, you know, I'll see all the stuff when you post it and all that. I'll get to see it and have a good gut busting laugh over that stuff. But my point is again, she is a symptom to the bigger problem, and I'm telling you, it's up to the parents to get a hold of this stuff and try to, as much as possible, remove this stuff from the school. And that means the school boards that are fueling this kind of crap, you got to get rid of them. I mean, you've got to get them out. You've got to get some people in there that are concerned about these children. I mean, all of this stuff that they're preying on our children with, is trans stuff. This stuff, I mean, we're being sold. They're selling these children on a bunch of lies, and it is heartbreaking as much as it is horrifying. So sorry to go off on a tangent. I'm sure that'll get them all started, but I got to get them cranked up 2 or 3 times in this little diatribe of mine, which I always enjoy doing. But yeah, she's and I hope they throw the book at her, and I hope she does many years in prison thinking about how stupid she is.
Well, she got arrested, and it's heading that way. Heather N says Carm is now a mural, and Mark said, to appreciate the new set, you've really got to watch it on a TV monitor in case you're watching it on your small little phone, which you should not be doing anyway. Scott Duffy. So this is how this all kind of went down. The teacher here, I believe her name is Crystal Frost, sent an obscene photo and asked that the student send a photo from the abs down. The school then received an anonymous tip that a 15-year-old student, only identified obviously because he's a minor, identified as GT, had a quote unquote nude breast photo of the math teacher on his phone, which he shared with classmates, which is what young boys are going to do. An administrator then confronted the teacher, who allegedly, quote unquote, admitted to a different photo she sent to the cheerleaders where she pulled her Nike shorts up high, allowing her behind cheeks to show. She took the picture, she says, and sent it as a joke. She resigned on August 24th, but obviously, Scott Duffy, she was trying to at least allege that it was a different photograph, different situation, not too easy to buy, because then it turns out that she was doing more things with more young students. But are you as um, disgusted and outraged by this sort of behavior as Fil Waters? Do you have any sort of tolerance because she's a woman?
No, and it absolutely has to be dealt with the same way. So or, and I think because we see these and going in the past, I agree with Phil. We're starting to see these more on the horizon, but it's something of going back, a couple of decades to where they would come out once in a while. It would be a great news story, but people were not disgusted. People did not think of it as pedophilia, for which it is. They just saw it as, well, um, beautiful young teacher, and you have a typical teenage boy, so good for him. That was the culture, and that was the understanding. And then this is why we're like stuck with these female teachers who have had these relationships, and the court really struggled to even treat it like it is. It's a pedophilia case. No different. Treat it exactly the same. Same disgust. And of course, they're fewer and far between what we see on the other side. But I I'm not even sure today the culture would treat it the way it should be treated. But I do think we're changing. But I agree. The If the shoe were on the other foot, it would be out the door. There would be no sense of any. Um, it would just be total disgust to throw the book and let that person go away forever, and everybody would join in on that. So it's regardless, man, female, whatever teacher having sexual relations or sharing of photos with regards to today's media with juvenile boys or girls, that is the classic definition of pedophilia, and it should be treated, and the law should be equal. And so thereby, I think when we start to see the courts treating it more so as such, we'll stop this allurement of, oh, it's a female teacher with the teenage boy and it's not that bad. It's absolutely BS and absolutely should be treated the same. It's dangerous.
And and Fil Waters, do you think that the impact on the victims is the same as it would be if they were female students being victimized, sexually assaulted by a male teacher? Do you think that the young boys will endure the same sort of damage and mental anguish that, let's say, a young girl would from a male teacher?
That's an interesting question, Joel. And sitting here now thinking about it, I don't know. I alluding to what Scott was talking about. In my day, and the joke when these things started to happen, the joke was, among a lot of guys was, man, I wish I had a teacher like that when I was in school. So it was kind of minimized. I don't know that I think the impact on a girl or a woman, I think, because I've talked to both in terms of this type of crime, and it kind of depends on the circumstance. Now, I think women and girls are going to be more greatly affected by something like this happening, because when a man does something like this to a female, it's not about the sex. It's about the power. It's about being able to control someone to satiate this drive of the flesh, this carnal drive that they have. With these women, I'm not so sure that is the same. There may be a component of that in there, but I think this is something to do with something that they feel about themselves. She's had 3 kids. Maybe her husband's not paying attention to her like he used to. Maybe she's not getting satisfied in the way that she used to. And because she's so self-absorbed about all of that, then the best way to satiate that is to go after some young boy that can satisfy her need. She's not doing anything she's using power over these young people to satisfy her need for gratification. So I think it is different, because in the sense that men and women are different. And I'm not going to say that the impact is any less in either degree, but it's going to be different, if that makes sense.
It sure does. Black Widower, answering the question I posed, says, of course it's just as bad for boys, Joel. It's a life sentence of anxiety, depression, sexual shame. So, Phil, a little bit on the fence there. Black Widower says it is the same for young boys as it is for young girls. We're going to have some psychologists on, as I said, this coming Wednesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. Be there or be square. Scott Duffy. Now, the student told police that GT, the student, had shown him the breast photo of the teacher. But then this student who spoke also dropped a bombshell. He said that GT, the student, and the teacher had been intimate. GT admitted that his teacher sent him the photo and then offered him sex. They met on a piece of land owned by his family in Pike County at least 4 times for these trysts. There was oral sex performed on him as well as sexual intercourse. So, Scott Duffy, this was the whole Megillah, as they say. And curious, sort of the same question I posed to Phil. Do you think this will have the same lasting emotional impact on this student? Obviously all the kids at school know, but we live in a weird society where maybe this young boy is going to be lauded by his fellow male students. I think, the girls are going to be like, this is disgusting, but maybe some of the boys are going to be like, oh, that kid's cool. He slept with a teacher. What do you say?
These are tough. These are tough cases, because a victim of sexual assault has so much to bear weight on their shoulders, boy or girl, man or woman. So the early onset is, hey, I'm going to share these photos. It's going to be a great a little group laughter. Look at me. But that's a small piece of the big picture, because without this classroom, look at what is happening now with this young man, potentially going to have to testify if she fights and does not plead out. And so thereby you're going to have just this he is going to see the day, if he hasn't already, and every other type of victim, where there may be a very small snapshot of wow, and then it's going to be very dark, and there's going to be therapy required. And so it's look at the attention that's already there. It's not a positive light, it's negative. And this is not the way anybody should grow up in with their sexual experiences early in life, to where all of a sudden it's a criminal experience. This boy, regardless, or a girl, regardless, when they do not have the age of consent, and there is power by the very fact of a teacher, coach, or whatever that title is, to that of a student or athlete. So it feels exactly right. It's all about power, and the young person does not sense that, and then once it's made known to them, very difficult to get through that. It's I just see it as a very long road. Regardless, I do, I and having been part of these types of investigation, that very small snapshot of him being in with his classmates and everybody laughing and patting him on the back like, wow, you did it, is very short-lived compared to what he and similar victims of both sexes will suffer. So it's just bad.
Well, and to add to this, the culture. Look, I mean, over the last 20 years, 30 years or so, you've got, some of the most popular songs, "Hot for Teacher" by Van Halen, and "Don't Stand So Close to Me" by the Police. I mean, there's all sorts of examples. You can probably find 25 songs that are directly related to teachers, and it's not in a complimentary way. It is this sexual tension thing going on. So, I mean, the culture breeds this kind of behavior.
Phil Waters, I probably shouldn't do this, but I think it is only best to be fully transparent and give you a chance to respond. But someone, and I can't find the comment now because it goes by too quick under this new system, so I'm going to have to work on that with Space Coast off air. But the gist of the comment was that you were conflating pedophilia with drag queens and transgenders, and that because you are doing that, you are being ignorant. Would you like to respond to this commenter?
No, I mean
No.
they can call it whatever they want to call it. If they want to call it conflating, it's all the same thought. It's the same process. And if they're okay with drag queens coming into their school and doing the things that were done in the dark of night in clubs for a certain group of people, and they're doing this in broad daylight in front of their 7, 8-year-old children, then they've got a problem. So I don't, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, that's their opinion. That's fine. They want to disagree. That's fine. They want to call me names. That's fine. But they're wrong.
Phil Waters, I like that you speak your mind. People are going to always disagree. That is the American way, and we are free to do so. Police tracked down a second teenager, Phil Waters, a 16-year-old student now identified as AP, who was also Frost's student. In the prior school year, she allegedly used the same exact tactics to prey on him, sent him a photo of her breast before asking if he knew a place to have sex, the police report said. The two met on a farm only once, where they allegedly had sex and intercourse. The teacher made no conversations with him from arrival to ending of the sexual contact, the report said. After the encounter, Frost allegedly sent 2 more lascivious photos and then blocked him from Snapchat. So she didn't even speak to him. That's interesting, I think. Literally did not say a word. She has since been arrested and charged, and she confessed to all the behavior. She's charged with traveling to meet a child for an unlawful sex act, electronic solicitation of a child, 2 counts of a school employee engaging in a sex act, and 2 counts of school employee distributing obscene material to a student. Should they throw the book at her, Fil Waters?
Yes. And let me address something too. The comment that you've got up here on the screen, Phil, I respectfully disagree. Both genders in power and getting gratification. I agree. I don't have any dispute with that statement at all. I was just trying to make a little distinction between men and women in the way they're going about doing this. So I agree with their statement here. Regarding the other stuff, look, I will tell you this, the things that are going on now in these schools 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we would have been putting those people in jail for sexual assault of a child just by the virtue of the fact that they are exhibiting themselves in that manner. So it is insanity to me that now we are somehow justifying this by being inclusive or whatever the local the current terminology is. I mean, folks, you better get on board with what's right and what's wrong, what's dark and what's light. And any of that stuff going down that road, which ends up manifesting itself in the conduct of this teacher, is evil. It's not mental illness, it's evil. When they're preying on our children, that is evil.
Get a text mid-show from the COE. Why would you bring up such a polarizing subject? I think it's important. We're going to do a whole show on this, COE, so relax yourself there. I'm going to spend, by the way, Raggedy Hobo says, amen, Phil. So as Phil and Scott and a lot of people in STS know, I become pretty close friends with Kerry Rawson. Her father is the notorious serial killer, Dennis Rader, who called himself BTK for bind, torture, and kill. My head is going to explode. I get yelled at by my wife. I have a new set. People hate it. Some people love it. I just need Friday to get here. I need to lay down with Ethel. Someone yelled at me that Ethel is not on the mural, but Mabel Rose is my had her before my wife, had her before my kids. There will never be an.
Your mother's
say
a
again?
therapist, right, Joel?
Yeah, I need to talk to her, Phil.
Well, then you maybe need to get on the couch with Carmen.
By the way, as soon
Not
as
in
this
the
is
sense
over,
that we were just talking about, of course, but I mean,
she's gonna call me and she's going to tell me how much she does not like this set, and I'm going to try to record it somehow, so I can play it for STS Nation. But I don't know that I'll be able to do that. What she say? Oh, look at this. Dominique says, I don't like the set. Sorry, Joel, but I love you. I'll take that. Boggy says, Carrie is amazing. People agreeing with Phil here. LOL, exactly, Phil. You're doing awesome, Joel. Heart emojis. The channel is not anti-trans. We are definitely not anti-trans. As a matter of fact, one of my closest friends' child is transgender. To be honest, it doesn't affect me one way or the other. I am I don't know, apolitical. I do not care. Have a good life. Do what makes you happy, and it doesn't bother me one bit, is what I have to say. Leisha Gallego says, "New studio!" Exclamation! Phil is grunting in Friday disdain. Okay, so BTK, Fil Waters, you've investigated. By the way, Fil Waters, what was your clearance rate? Because I just talked to a detective, Chicago's homicide division, 31% clearance rate. And I had the former police chief for the great city of Detroit. When he got in there, the clearance rate in Detroit was 11%. And I bring it up because Ann Burgess last night said, I love Grumpy Phil. Ann Burgess, who's world-renowned profiler. She said last night that, so many of these homicides go unsolved, so we don't really know the extent of serial killing, which made me think of it. But I digress. Back to BTK. So Kerry
Would you
Rawson
like me to
is
answer the
openly.
question? I did catch the question in that one.
Oh, what was the question? You tell me.
What was my clearance rate?
Oh yeah, what was your clearance rate, Phil?
So the Houston Police Department, in my time there, the division's clearance rate was many years over 85%, and which is, I think the national average is something like 58 or maybe 60%. But the my personal clearance rate was 96%, and of those 90% confessions.
That is, for those who did not hear that, 96% clearance rate, 90% confessions. That is why he is America's most respected detective. Fil Waters, that's a incredible statistic, especially compared to Detroit, which was at 11%, and Chicago only at 31%. But so Phil, the broader question is this: Kerry Rawson, went through hell and back, a victim of trauma. Father, she concedes, is a horrific serial killer, but now she's helping investigators. She's out pounding the pavement, digging dirt, looking for clues, looking for evidence for these victims' families. What say you about all that, Phil?
We've talked about this before. I think Carrie is an amazing young woman. I think that this is therapeutic for her. I think this is great for her to be able to work her way through what her father did to so many people and the ripple effect that it had in such a negative way. So kudos to her for, I think she has found, each of us has a purpose in this life. And I think that Carrie has found her purpose. I think this has, and I have noticed in your discussions when you started with her, and now the discussions that are taking place in all manner of different platforms, that her countenance has changed. I see her now as just, when she started and you were interviewing her, I just noticed what I thought was a lot of anxiety. And it was coming across. I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm just saying that's what was really coming across, because she was very anxious about all of these things that she's doing and that she has kept inside of her for 18 years, never having made contact with her father until recently. So, but since that's happened, and she is warrioring on for these victims and their families, I think that explains the countenance, the change in her countenance, because now she has, she's just reflecting the love that she has for these folks in trying to bring a larger measure, or maybe just a measure, period, of peace for those people. And we hope, as more victims are identified, that it brings about a measure of justice for those folks. So I think she's an amazing example of a person who has overcome a huge barrier in her life and is now on the other side of that, and is turning something so horrific into something that is ultimately going to have just amazing results for a whole host of people, in a very positive way. So again, kudos to her. I think she's a wonderful young woman.
Black Widower says, I wish so hard for the day Carrie's life will be her own. JW, great initials, says Carrie is saving herself, inspiring. There was another good comment that I am going to continue to lose under this new system till I figured it out. I like this comment. Uh, and you three guys look sexier on the big screen too. Thank you, Heidi. Tell my wife that. He told me 5 years after we were married that someone told her that I was sort of cute, and she was like, I never noticed. So maybe you want to let the COE know that. Scott Duffy, to you. So what's interesting now, and we're going to wrap in a few. The Osage County Sheriff's Office has kind of taken the lead on this. They're asking the public for help. I got a message from Kerry late Wednesday night, very late Wednesday night. She's been working nonstop. By the way, that is the site of Kerry's old home, where she grew up. They found what Dennis Rader referred to as a hidey hole, 2 feet under the ground, where they found that you can see the sheriff. He's holding what is a black pantyhose ligature that they believe was used in some of these killings. But Scott Duffy, the bigger picture here is they have new information about two new possible victims. There's a woman named Carol Sullins. She was an exotic dancer last seen outside her job at a club in either Galena or Galena, Kansas. I'm not sure which way to pronounce it. She was talking to a man with a camper shell on a truck. She went missing August 31st, 1991, when she was 18. Today she would be 50. And then there's Mary Georgine Lang. She went missing from Hays, Kansas back on October 21st, 1983. She was a secretary for a local attorney, 31 years old. She was out bringing some papers over. Today she'd be 70 years old. The big picture question here, Scott Duffy, are you surprised that after confessing to 10 murders in 2005, now investigators are looking at up to 5 more potential murders, and some say could be many, many more? Does that surprise you with a serial killer like Dennis Rader?
No, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all. And as on a previous episode here, we've discussed of this, and I second everybody with regards to what you've done with and what Carrie has done to shine the light. And 10 is not the number that she believes in her heart, and she's not just as a daughter, as a family member, but really digging deep into her soul and then utilizing all that energy to be those fresh eyes, the second eyes on everything that she has seen and collected with regards to photos and diaries and so forth. So kudos to you, kudos to her for going down this road, which just rehashing a lot, and but she's able to be getting answers for herself, and getting answers for herself. She is assisting law enforcement solving crime, because these victims are forever lost, and to not have a an answer for their survivors to be able to say where or what has happened is just a tremendous, it's just an everyday suffering that I could never even imagine. So it doesn't surprise me, and I couldn't even put a number at it because of the likes of BTK, the likes of Dennis Rader, the likes of someone like him who kills for the sake of, and there are multiple factors in this, right? And the profilers out there and those that study serial killers to understand what drives them, but to it is an insatiable um, hunger, drive, and to stop at any particular number. These serial killers are stopped because law enforcement has stopped them, not because they have their own free will. Just said, that's enough. I've moved on. So I can absolutely see this number climbing, and I couldn't put a number as to what that could be.
Jody Johnston echoes, I am not surprised. It seems as though BTK was taken at his word when he confessed They did not tear the house apart like they did with Rex Heuermann. Obviously, Long Island police took some heat for the way they destroyed that. Just kind of one more thing, Phil, and then we're going to wrap up and say goodnight. Um, 3 sketches were released. I don't know if you saw them, and Space Coast. I'm not sure if we have them, but there is one in a green dress. These are very unusual because of the many hundreds of sketches. There we go. Space Coast is on the ball. You're seeing 2 of what are believed to be only 10 color sketches. He made hundreds of sketches, but only 10 in color. Now, this young woman in the green dress, according to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons Database, there are 5 missing women unsolved cases in Kansas from when Dennis Rader's first kill happened in 1974 and his arrest on February 25th, 2005. So 5 missing women, unsolved cases. And only one of those women was last seen wearing a green dress. And so they believe it could be this victim whose name is out there now, Carol Sullivan. She was just 18, 5 feet 3 inches tall, and weighed 100 pounds. Someone did admit 2 men were charged. The body was never found, and one man said he accidentally caused her death, but law enforcement doesn't necessarily believe him. My big question to you, as a man with a 90-something% clearance rate, seeing it all, what do you see when you look at these sketches?
Well, this is very similar to the pictures that he took of himself, where he is reliving the moment. He has, for whatever reason, picked out these particular sketches. How many sketches did you say they were?
Only 10 in color, but hundreds of black and white.
Okay.
And by the way, people made fun of me last night when we had Ann Burgess on, but I think he's a pretty good artist. I could never draw this detail.
Oh, no, I was,
in
in fact, it's funny you say that. I was just looking at it and I was thinking in terms of his ability to draw. I think, it's too bad that he didn't channel that into artwork instead of what he channeled it into. But I think these are like the pictures. He wants to remember what he did. He wants to remember, because I've said it before, these guys like this, especially this particular one, they're never satiated. They're never satisfied. And so it's important. These are trophies. These are like certificates that he gives himself for all the work that he did. And so it is fascinating. I'm sure that your panel of psychologists are going to find this stuff fascinating from a psychological view. I find it fascinating from a homicide cop's view, in that these are the kind of things, when I'm doing psychological autopsies of my suspects, these are the types of things that play into that evaluation. You're trying to get a sense of what was this person thinking and what are they thinking about all the time. And a guy like this is doing just that. We've said it before. He thinks about this over 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He's just he is constantly processing, where's my next victim and what am I going to do? And so what we see here in these pictures and in the pictures that he took of himself, he is consistent in the manner in which he brings about the horrific way that he brings about these young women's deaths. And so it is, I'm sure the psychologists will be able to further analyze these things about why he's doing what he's doing. But I think the bondage stuff, the hanging, which would, to me, it looks like he's reminding himself that he holds the power over their lives, of life and death. And then whenever he chooses to use the rope to extinguish those lives, then he's got it there in front of him, and he can be gratified over and over again when he's not in the middle of the act. And I would say this too, you might want to ask these psychologists. I would imagine that while they are in the same type of situation here, they are dressed differently, which would mean what? This is for each one of the victims that he remembers vividly. And so he relives each moment with each individual woman. And I mean, I would think these psychologists would think this is fascinating. I think it's fascinating just from a homicide cop's perspective. But
Ann Burgess weighed in last night. Really interesting comments from her. Misdemeanor OG says Ann Burgess is still so smart. What an analytical mind. You're never supposed to reveal a woman's age, but she's in her late 80s and she is still so active and energized. It's unreal. Dr. Joni Johnson said exactly what you said, Fil Waters, which is these serial killers, this is what they're thinking about 24/7, 365. Scott Duffy, you're gonna get the final word tonight, not Fil Waters. So this middle drawing, by the way, well, I don't know about that. So then I want to talk to you about the weekend for 3 seconds. So maybe Phil will get the final word, and maybe I'm wrong after all. But the authorities released these images for specific reasons because Dennis Rader had a fascination with barns and with silos. And this green dressed girl, you could see what appear to be black slats behind her. And sitting on a bale of hay. So they wanted to know if people's minds would be jogged at all by any of these photos. The one on the right in the red, that's almost like a brown wooden fencing behind her. So they want to know if people recognize anything. And in this middle photo, Scott Duffy, is, according to law enforcement, taken from above. This woman is actually laying on the floor of a barn loft. The psychologist said, and it's sort of apparent when you look at it, that she looks the most forlorn, like she's given up or could even be dead. Someone else pointed out something really interesting, which is that little rope next to the one in the black and white that's kind of twirling around next to her left elbow. That is similar to that sign that when Kerry went and saw Dennis Rader and asked if it was just 10, he went like this. Someone pointed that out to me, which is very fascinating. Scott Duffy, what do you see in these drawings, and do you think these photos could jog someone's memory?
Ooh, I get for the sake of location, I would find it very difficult for somebody to say that's my fence or my neighbor's fence or the, like for looking for a location, I would find it difficult. I can guarantee you the person who sketched these absolutely knows, and there's enough detail in there to take them exactly where it is, um, and take them to live that moment over and over again. But it is I will say, as with regards to the artistry, just looking at it right off the bat to see um, the different fear, the expressions on the face, the detail is, and I guess I have a question: are these sketched from memory? Are they sketched from because we know he's had photographs? Are there are there Polaroids or some other photos, and thereby he sketched these as a way of forever burning them in his memory? Or
What's
is he sketching?
particularly yeah, what's really disturbing, and I'm glad you asked because I didn't mention it, is that these, at least the color sketches, the indications are that he was sketching them as they were either dying or being killed in real
Yeah,
time, which
and
is really eerie.
I could see that. Um, and so thereby he's it goes to show the depravity of such an individual and what think about any one of us who are in a panic moment or whatever it is that raises that adrenaline and um, and whatever that moment of fear or whatever on a roller coaster. But imagine the most horrible thing we can imagine as a human being, this, where you're combining a this is a sexual pleasure with a brutal, brutal homicide. Um, and then to be able to step back with amazing detail and just looking at the faces, that looks like there's a lot of detail in the faces, which goes to just further in my mind just how depraved. So that's why, and I was looking to see if there are corresponding photos, and if they're not, I wonder at what point did he convert. So are these early sketches of the beginning, and then he went to Polaroids, then putting himself in the shoes of the victims, reenacting with their clothes and so forth. So what we're seeing is an amazing progression of somebody who's just continuing to reach or to get that pinnacle of gratification, and he never achieves it. He never achieves it and continues to do it over and over and over again, slightly changing his manner. So I wonder at the end of all this, and the investigation will be conclusive and these victims identified, if these are early in his days, in the middle, or um in the end. This is what kind of questions that come to my mind as an investigator.
Interesting take. Someone says, get these off the screen, please. This is what they say is the awful truth, the harsh reality of a serial killer. We were examining these last night. Scott Duffy, Phil Waters, two of the best people I know. Estella Jasmine, Scott Duffy says that rain is in the cards for this escapee, but not to lose hope. Tracks after the rain would be helpful. Before we get to that, special shout out to Kerry Rawson, who is still out on the road. Thinking of you, here for you. Best guest, thank you for the super sticker. Can't make out the name here. Thanks for bringing such experts to the table to give their insight and experiences to these cases. I think it's clipped there, but it's all good. Space Coast. Scott Duffy, they're going to catch this guy this weekend.
I hope so. For their sake, I hope so, because it's weighing on everybody. It's weighing, the whole community. The whole community is on lockdown, and law enforcement is absolutely at its wits' end. But they will continue the fight. It's not going to end. It's only going to get more intensifying. And as I totally agree with the lieutenant colonel, they are stressing him out as well as they should, and they want him to make mistakes so thereby he can be captured. But I can't put a day on it.
I love that Phil is bold in his faith, followed here by Phil speaks the truth, followed by Phil is my favorite, followed by brilliant guests and hosts, mods, and chat. Phil Waters, how many hours a day does Nugget sleep? Did she sleep through this entire podcast? This was a long one.
Hello, little girl. Come here.
She has to rest up for her next nap, which is in 3 minutes.
Well, it's very tiring to nap
all day. Bring her up here. Come here, Nugget.
Come here, little pig. Come here. Come here, little pig.
I love when Big Tough Phil speaks baby doggy talk to Nugget.
Come here, little big dog. Come here.
Phil, you got a haircut.
I did.
Looks great. Looks fantastic.
Here's my little big dog.
Ah, there she is. I love it.
Yeah.
What does she eat Phil, what does she eat? What do you feed
We
her?
have her on a little weight control dry food, and then we give her a little wet food. So, yeah.
How's that breath of hers? It's okay?
Well, it's nice that you asked, Joel, because just this week we bought her some little breath wafers. And so they go ahead.
Are they helping? Are they helping?
They appear to be, yes. Because she did have
super sticker from Carla.
Didn't have bad doggy breath, and so we got her some little breath wafers, and they treats, and they appear she likes them, so that's good, and they appear to be working.
I love dogs so much that I don't mind their bad breath. This person on the question, Tiffany H, says, friend of the show, by the way. I didn't see it was Tiffany. I love Joel's questions. I ask about dogs' breath. And Black Widow says, brush your teeth, dude. To you, Phil. So
that's been done. We brush our dogs' teeth in Magnolia and in Houston. And so, no, we are aware of the benefits of brushing doggy teeth. But thank you so much, whoever that was.
Scott Duffy, please stay armed and safe this weekend. I hope you're hunkering down at a bar where there's a lot of other people who could attack this Brazilian in case he walks in. Any big plans tonight, Scott?
No big plans tonight. Just laying low.
Laying low. Phil, Bible study, pizza tomorrow night. You're a man of you're very predictable, Phil, but I like it.
Oh, well, I like to think of myself as being predictably unpredictable.
Predictably unpredictable. I love it. I bet your wife would not say that. But guys, have a wonderful weekend.
She would tell you about my OCD, is what she would tell you.
Yeah, I have some of that too, Phil. So it makes us special. Don't forget that. Scott, I love your chair. It's very aerodynamic. I never quite noticed it. It's great. It's awesome.
My son's gaming chair.
Oh, beautiful. Duffy, keep me updated on Cavalcante, whatever you hear. Please let me know. Okay. Everyone, loves having you, love being here. I got to say, this was the most stressful show I've done in my entire time at STS because of these many screens. I'm gonna have to figure this out, have to figure out the lighting, have to do a lot of things, but we'll get it all done. Until next time, love you, America. Love you, Scott and Phil. Love you, Delaware. Love you, Philly. Love you, Houston. Love you, Hawaii. Love you, the Big Island. Love you, Maui. Everywhere, near and far, in between. Let's see how this closing animation goes. Roll it, Space Coast.